Welcome to A Healthy Curiosity, the podcast that explores what it takes to be well in a busy world. With self-care strategies from Chinese medicine, functional medicine, Ayurveda, neuroscience, and beyond. I'm your host, Brody Welch, a licensed acupuncturist and transformation catalyst, here to support you on your journey of health, happiness, and personal evolution. Thanks for tuning in to A Healthy Curiosity. Today's show was not supposed to be meant for public consumption. It was originally an interview that I did for my Inner Alchemy course members, but I hear so many people, my coaching clients and patients in clinic, struggling with self-compassion that I wanted this conversation to reach a wider audience. So if you think you know everything there is to know about gratitude, I invite you to drop what you think you know and consider how it might be put to use as a gateway to self-compassion and a kinder inner dialogue with ourselves. Dearest Inner Alchemy members, you may think that you know all about gratitude and self-compassion because we've gone over both of these things a ton in our experience together. But I have a special guest today who is going to help us dive even deeper on both of these topics as we explore the earth element, because really the earth element is about being able to be nurtured by our lives, being able to take in the sweetness, being able to be sweet with ourselves, being able to really focus on what is nourishing about our life experience so that we can digest it in a positive way and make useful chi out of it. So I have the privilege and the pleasure of speaking with a colleague from my yoga health coaching community, Hlava, who has literally written a book on gratitude. She's a Ph.D. She has 15 years of experience in the health and wellness field as a licensed psychotherapist, meditation instructor. She's a registered yoga teacher, and she, I thought, would be an awesome person to talk to about how gratitude and self-compassion are both skills and how they are intimately intertwined. So Patty, thanks so much for being willing to do this deep dive with my course members.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here.
First off, what do we need to know about gratitude that we don't already know?
It depends on what you do know, but what most people don't know, I think, is that gratitude is more than just this idea of acknowledging, like, hey, thank you for that. It's more than the drive-by thanks, but that it's actually something that we can cultivate, and that it has the ability to transform our experiences, to transform who we are, how we show up in the world, and how we see the world. It also has this amazing ability to get us through more difficult challenges, as opposed to just being this thing that we do to kind of keep in balance or keep in check. It actually is a skill that helps us heal and helps us transform pain into a grounding experience of being in the world, a greater depth of compassion for ourselves and others. It's a transformative experience.
I know that gratitude, and something that we've talked about in the course, is that idea of really making it heartfelt and specific can be useful, so that we're not just phoning it in. We're not just kind of like going through like, I'm grateful for the roof over my head and my husband and my kids and my, like that, but that we get really specific about what it is we're grateful for as a way of amplifying that and as a way of making it more real for ourselves. How else do we do gratitude right in order to cultivate this skill?
Well, that's one great example, Brody. I think just being able to recall the exact experience and the specifics, and actually close in and recall it, visualize it, feel the sense experience and breathe into it to expand that is one other piece. The next thing is to actually express it. So it's one thing to write it down, but then to acknowledge, like, how do I actually bring that back out into the world? Because the more we express it and exchange it, the more that it grows. So whether that's a pay it forward action or writing a letter, even sending a text, or even just acknowledging yourself, like, hey, thank you, me, for taking the time to do that thing. That felt really nourishing.
Yeah. Well, and that just seems like it follows along that thought, word, and deed continuum, right? That it's like, it's one thing to think it. It's more powerful when you translate that into an action, like you're saying, like just actually making that real in the world. Also, just that in terms of practicing gratitude, it seems like just the idea of how can I act on this? Like it gives us a different orientation, right? It's not just something that we're receiving. It's something that we're actually interacting with.
Yeah.
Which is kind of a cool thing to think about. You said something a minute ago, though, that I want to circle back to. as basically that it can help us heal. And so I know that times when we're going through things that, like when life sucks, right? When life has just dealt you the shittiest hand and you feel like gratitude is really hard to come by, you're saying in our little pre-chat, you talked about how this is actually where gratitude can help you the most. And I'd love for you to explain how that's true. Because like the times when it just looks like, are you kidding me? Like, this is my life. Yeah.
Right.
Help us out.
It is. It's like the most counterintuitive thing. We're like, what do I have to be grateful for right now? When I was doing the research, that's the one thing that came up. The most profound experiences of gratitude happen when people were in their most difficult times, whether it was recovering through cancer or homelessness or losing a home through severe like just some really intense stuff. And there's these two elements to it. So there's the what else is also true? Like just that simple question of sitting with like, hey, here's this, and what else is also true alongside this? I may not have this, and here's this pocket of support. Here's somebody that's showing up for me. There's that element. The other
I love that. Just to hang on to that one piece. So the first piece, number one, people, as we're compiling this toolkit, what else is also true here, right? So you can look through the lens of like, my life sucks, everything's terrible, or whatever, and the question then is like, well, what else is also true? Like, it's an invitation to not negate what's going on over here, but to look and to broaden out and to be able to hold all of it in our consciousness. That's something that is. It reminds me of Byron Katie's work, in her question of like, if you have a limiting belief and you're like, okay, well, is this true? Is it really true? Well, what else could also be true? Like that, just what else could be just as true as this thing that you're believing that's causing you misery? So just, it's that invitation of like, yes, we feed what we focus on, and what we focus on is where our energy, our prana, our chi is going. It's directed. And so we're basically inviting it to go in a direction that feels more nourishing.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay. So piece number 2, we're ready for it now.
Piece number 2 is kind of like, this is kind of not out to all the Harry Potter fans out there. It's kind of like what I call the gratitude Patronus, right?
Nice.
Like in Harry Potter, there's that moment when he's in those darkest fears, he channels that experience of love. He recalls that great moment, and it gives him the strength to expand and come into himself. And we can do that with gratitude too. We come back to embodying that, like, what am I grateful for right now? The what else is also here. As long as I have breath, I'm better than not, right? I'm doing okay. So coming back to these moments in our life, the supports that we've had, and really owning that. That's where the gratitude journal becomes really a useful tool, especially when we have the details. Because we can go back and we can embody that and remember that and channel that strength, which then helps us say, yeah, and here's this pain, and all these past experiences of gratitude are still real too. I still have this. This is here. Now I can move forward and know that that will also come again, because everything comes and goes. Our pain is temporary. Our joy is temporary, and each one comes back again. So when we channel that gratitude, it becomes a sort of Patronus that helps us connect to our strength and our resiliency in a way that we otherwise might not be able to.
So is the idea then to, like, when we're feeling at that low point, we literally could bust out a gratitude journal that we've written in the past, and we could also see if we could recall, if we don't have anything written down, we could just see if we can recall something that we've ever been grateful for, and bring that forth.
Yeah. And channel that feeling in the body, because what the mind is focusing on, the body believes. Like our neurophysiology works that way, where what we think is what the body's believing is true. So if we're embracing a memory that contains love and gratitude and connectivity, our body's going to experience that. The gratitude at its core is relational. It's about relationships. And the interesting thing is, when we're in those moments of pain, when we're in those moments of that deep despair, is when we're feeling the most alone. That's what makes them feel so painful. We feel like nobody gets it, like we're in this experience by ourselves. When we come back to gratitude, we're remembering moments of connectivity, of connection, whether it's with ourselves, with the divine, with the body, with another person. So when we connect to that, we're suddenly not in that aloneness anymore. And that's the part that helps us move into that healing space, to tap into resiliency and self-compassion.
This episode of A Healthy Curiosity is brought to you by my Basics of Chinese Medicine, Your Inner Ecosystem course. If you're curious about the energetic anatomy of your subtle body, the 5 elements, the psycho-spiritual dimensions of your internal organs, and how to align with the rhythms of nature, this course is for you. How cool would it be to know what point you could press on to calm yourself down or make a headache go away, or to stop gas and bloating and drop extra weight easily when you understand the body clock, digestive fire, and the energetics of food as medicine? Looking through the lens of yin and yang and the 5 elements, you'll see yourself and the patterns that you use to stay safe in a whole new way, so you don't have to be bound by them. If you're looking for more tools for your self-care toolbox and a framework for personal evolution, this Learn From Anywhere course is ready whenever you are. This course provides a deep dive into Chinese medical theory without having to enroll in acupuncture school or get lost in a sea of jargon. I make these teachings accessible and fun without dumbing it down. Just head to the classes and meditations page at brodywelch.com. That's Brody with an IE and Welch with a CH. And enroll. Now back to the show. That point that you just made about how the body and our physiology that are even if we're just imagining gratitude in a different moment, it's all the same to our brains, right? Like that when we're really there, when we can conjure it up, our physiology will follow suit.
Yes.
Is that the essential piece then? Like, I mean, I'm thinking about a client right now with depression who really struggles to conjure up any gratitude at all. So what advice would you have for someone who's like, oh yeah, well, it's an intellectual thing. I know I could be grateful for these things, but I can't really tap into the feeling. Like what advice would you have for someone in that situation?
It's starting by meeting the person where they are. So sometimes when we're in that spot, it's hard to make the big leap to, yes, I'm really grateful to that awesomeness. So it's starting by actually going really small. It might even be starting just by saying, well, what's not absolutely terrible right now? What's okay? What doesn't suck? So
what doesn't suck the most?
Doesn't suck?
Right. What sucks the least?
We start
today?
with something that's kind of neutral and say, okay, well, this isn't terrible. This part's okay. So I'm going to hang out there for a moment. And breathe in okayness for a second.
Yeah. So really breathe in like not suck.
Yeah.
It doesn't suck. Wow. Like my left nostril doesn't hurt.
Yeah.
Like, okay. Yeah. So it's really, really specific, right? Like something that we can authentically find. And because even in that moment, we're training our brains to focus on something other than the suck.
We're shifting, we're breaking the negativity bias. Because the brain has that natural tendency towards negativity. 80% of our thoughts are naturally negative. Yes. So every moment we can go to something that's neutral and leaning towards pleasant. We're shifting our neurophysiology. We're changing the way our brain is interpreting the world. We're giving it another alternative. We're giving it an option that it didn't know it had.
Yeah, exactly. And we can do that because we're not our minds and we're not our bodies, right? We have this power to shift paying attention to, which is magic.
Exactly.
So tell me about how gratitude and self-compassion are related.
They are so incredibly linked. It's really quite unbelievable. So when we get to gratitude in those moments, like with the client you were just talking about, where it's difficult, one of the first steps is to just acknowledge, like, hey, this is hard right now. And that softens us and opens us up just a little bit. If we can just acknowledge that, hey, this is hard, instead of fighting ourselves, like it shouldn't be this hard, which is where the brain wants to go, right? It shouldn't be this hard. I shouldn't have to. And then, okay, wait, no, this is hard right now.
Oh, and just the way you said that, like being your own witness, it's like, it feels like you have company. It feels like you're not so alone in it. It feels like that even if you're just witnessing yourself, but there's that wise one who's like, yeah, this is hard right now. You're going through something tough. Yes. That's actually like you can kind of, you become your own ally in those moments.
Yeah. And that's where the magic happens. Because like I said, gratitude is relational by nature. It doesn't happen in a vacuum. So when we can soften into that moment of like, oh yeah, this is hard, suddenly we're opening up the heart space to let ourselves in. And we can acknowledge those moments of even gratitude for ourselves, for our body that's working so hard to keep us okay. Our body that's working so hard to get us through this hard time. And we can go, oh yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So, and I could see being true, even if you are struggling physically, like that there's other things that are working well, that there's other things, thank God, that we don't have to pay attention to.
Yeah.
Self-compassion can be another one of those things that's difficult to access when we need it most, right? We feel like we've screwed up. We said something hurtful. We wish we hadn't. We're beating ourselves up. We are, we're tearing ourselves down. We're feeling ashamed. We feel like we absolutely deserve this because we didn't act in alignment with our highest values or whatever. How do we find, where's the self-compassion life jacket that we can reach out for? Like, just how do we find it? How do we rescue ourselves from the downward spiral of shame that we might be in, or self-flagellation, whichever more privileged?
I love that because they're both so incredibly human, and we've all done it. I know I've done it. I've been down that spiral, and it's that it's that moment. It's taking that moment, and it's coming out of the mind and going into the body, because that process of self-deprecation, self-flagellation is something that happens in the space of the mind. So the first thing I want to do is go into the body. The phrase is like soften the body to soften the mind. Mm-hmm. When we soften the body, we're creating space for self-compassion to show up and to see our shared humanness. So there's this phrasing that we can play with, and it's really just holding the heart and putting another hand around the belly. So when we hold the heart right here, just pressing on that heart center on the sternum, we're actually activating the immune system. We're actually activating our body to sort of go into that rest and digest state of mind. And we're feeling our breath. We're feeling our body. We're softening that. And then we just simply acknowledge it like, hey, right now at this moment, I'm feeling, and you name it. That's all you're doing. You're just acknowledging that it's there. And then you get to step into this other space of, hey, you know what? Other people feel this way too. I'm not alone. So we know that every emotion we experience, everything we feel is universal. The context around it is very different. But the feeling of fear, loneliness, isolation, self-deprecation, there's not a human alive who hasn't experienced it on some level. So we can go, yeah, I'm not alone. Others have felt this too. And then we invite, like, hey, may I be kind to myself in this moment? And we're just giving it a moment. We're not even saying like forever, right? Because that gets daunting. So it's just like, oh yeah, right now I'm feeling really shameful about that. This is really hard. Other people feel that too. I'm not alone. May I be kind to myself in this moment. And we just breathe through that and feel the softening move through the body, which creates an opportunity for the mind to release that negativity loop that it was in.
Yeah. Do you have a place that you encourage people to start with the softening?
Right here.
Right here at the heart. Okay.
Right here at the heart, and with an exhale. And I'll actually invite people to do a really, like, the intentional audible exhale. Like, let the exhale really happen. Like, breathe in and just we can feel things move through us when we do that loud exhale. Because our tendency when we're in that shame is to constrict and to contract.
Yeah, I actually really like to exaggerate the contraction. Like when I'm in that state, I'm like, I am so tight right now. Like just acknowledging that, like, I feel really tense and feeling where I'm feeling the tension. I'm noticing it in my jaw. I'm noticing it in my shoulders. I'm noticing it in my gut. And I'm really going and putting my mind and my consciousness in these places that are so tight, because it's the law of yin and yang, right? Like once something tightens beyond how much it can tighten, it has to soften.
Yes.
And so it's like I'll even just invite it and I'll let my awareness go there. It's like these are so tense, and then I give it the breath and I feel it softening and I recognize that change is already happening.
Yes.
Right? Like, because nothing's ever the same, and it's magic, right? We really can use our bodies.
Yeah.
And when we notice that, then the mind gets a chance to catch up.
Soften the body, soften the mind. It naturally, one flows into the other. It's beautiful.
If we feel like the self-compassionate voice is just hard to come by, like if we had a lot of negative self-talk, or maybe if it's like even seems like the dominant voice in our heads, this seems like a lot. You're asking us to notice, you're asking us to put our hands on our bodies, you're asking us to invite in a softening and a may I be kind to myself. It's like that's a multi-step process. So for beginners, it's like, do you work your way into that in terms of like for somebody who's like, wow, this is a brand new concept. The only voice in my head is beating me up, or the only voice in my head is telling me like just what a piece of crap I am. So what's a good on-ramp?
Exactly what you just said there, Brody, is just naming it out loud. Wow, my mind is really stuck on this right now.
Okay.
Just saying it out loud. Because as soon as we say it out loud, it changes our relationship to it. Suddenly it's external.
Ah,
And
okay.
it's this thing. Like if we're just able to say like, wow, my mind is caught in that loop right now. It's suddenly, it's not in here and we're not wrestling with it. It's suddenly out here. So even just saying it out loud, it's
Even to
that,
ourselves?
yeah, say it
Yeah,
to the
yeah,
cat, say it
yeah.
to the wall,
Uh-huh.
say it to,
Right, but get it out of your head, get it so that it's this neutral thing that you've observed, and also so that you've got some company, right? Like
yeah.
there's that, recognizing that it's universal.
It shifts the energy of it. It changes the relationship of it. It's just starting small. It's starting where you are and just making a movement towards relating to it in a different way than you have been. That's where it starts. It's all of this is about relationship, and our relationship with ourself is one of the most challenging. Is we're not really. It's harder to see our patterns because we're in it with ourselves. Nobody's there to tell it, reflect back to us, but us. Right?
Exactly. Yes.
So, but by saying it out loud, we're changing our dynamic. And suddenly, we're bringing another sense organ into it. We're hearing it instead of just thinking it. So by saying it out loud, we're changing our relationship to the language, to the words that are running around rampant in our mind. We can process them differently.
Great. Are there words that you would encourage us to use or not use, like that can help with our relationship with ourselves?
I don't know that I have an answer to that. I think there's this, say what's in your mind so you can hear it out loud, because sometimes just hearing them, you're like, wow, that's not a word I would use for anyone else. We can
So,
become aware of it, right?
well, yeah, and that really, I think, is like, if you do hear how you're talking to yourself, you could recognize how you would never say that to a friend, you would never say that to someone you actually cared about and respected, and that can be a way of just catching yourself in negative self-talk, and
Mm-hmm.
maybe even giving yourself an apology of like, wow, yeah, that's really harsh. Like,
Yeah.
I'm talking to myself in a really harsh way right now.
Yeah.
And recognizing that can be a first step in healing it or shifting it or changing that
Yeah.
relationship with ourselves. Anything else that you feel like we could really benefit from knowing about either of these topics? I feel like we've
Well,
learned a lot already, but
well, one thing,
yeah. Mhm.
because you were just speaking for a moment there, Brody, I recalled a colleague of mine, another psychologist, who one of her strategies with that negative self-talk is instead of just saying it out loud, she sings it. And she tries to sing it in the most silly lyric, like with a row, row, row your boat kind of lyric. It like or
That's
something
great.
that's just it brings a little bit of silliness to it, because again when we're laughing we're taking in more breath, we're opening the
Mhm.
heart space and we're softening the body, and it actually brings a level of absurdity to it, because most of that internal self-deprecating thought is pretty ridiculous, right?
Well,
Like
and from a Chinese medicine standpoint, what you just described is using fire to melt metal.
yeah.
Right. So metal is like rigid and harsh and pretty unforgiving. It's pretty black and white. And if we're in black and white thinking, adding the humor, laughter, like that's in the domain of the fire element in the heart. And so you're actually using the power of the fire element to soften metal. It's beautiful.
And that brings us right back into that heart space then
Yeah.
ultimately, like we're open and we can ground into that, like that there's both gratitude and self-compassion, I think at the root are they're very grounding, they're very relational, they're interconnected, they're about our relationship with our body, with ourself, with the universe, with the divine, with nature, with other humans. And so when we can get into that space and see that we're in connection, things feel a little bit more accessible and a little less overwhelming.
Oh, yeah, exactly. And that's what the earth element is all about. The earth is relational. It is about
Mhm.
nurturing all life. It is about the interconnections between us. It is the social element. The spleen constructs our sense of who we are in the world. Spleen and stomach are the earth element organ systems, and they create the chi. The spleen creates the blood. It's where the blood
Mm.
is made, and the blood stores our identity and our emotions. And so our sense of who we are in the world and the social roles that we play are things of our own creation that is constructed literally by our earth element. And so we need each other in order to understand how we contribute to the fabric of the world, and how we are nurtured by it, and how we nurture others, and how we relate. So that idea of, yes, that connection can help us to stay out of the shame which tends to distance ourselves from
Mhm.
our hearts, coming back
Yeah.
home. Patty, this has been such an informative and useful and practical discussion. I so appreciate your wisdom and your time today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
If you've got a healthy curiosity, you want to know how you can be doing right by your body and how to live a more mindful, streamlined life in accordance with your values. While I love that you tune into the show every week, are you taking action? If not, why not? Here are the top 3 roadblocks that could be holding you back. 1. Thinking that knowing is doing. They're different things. Knowing the properties of herbs is different than actually taking them. Knowing how to change a habit is different than actually changing up your routine. Knowing is the first step, but the second, third, fourth, and 100th steps involve action. Number 2, thinking that because you're smart and used to being successful, that you need to do it all yourself. This one dogged me for years as an independent-minded overachiever. That is, until I realized that 1, I can't see my own blind spots, and 2, I don't know what I don't know. Now, I'd much rather work with a guide who can point out the shortcut for the path I want to travel rather than get lost in the woods alone. Not only is it way easier, but I'm more likely to show up for myself if I've told my coach or my mastermind partners what I'm trying to do. Reason number 3, thinking that you don't have the money. What we spend money on is a reflection of what we're prioritizing. Maybe it's time to prioritize you. I'm opening up my calendar for a handful of one-on-one coaching clients. I've helped thousands of women break up with stress, optimize their habits, mood, hormones, weight, and vitality with integrative body-mind tools from Chinese medicine, yoga, neuroscience, coaching, and ancient wisdom. Just as importantly, I pour my heart into each of my clients, and you will feel that love in every single interaction. If you're ready to feel more calm and confident in your own skin, start feeling younger every year, feeling like you're at the center of your own life rather than just getting through it, and feel loved and supported in the process, head over to the Work With Me page at brodywelch.com and apply to work with me one-on-one. That's Brody with an IE and Welch with a CH. Thanks for listening today. To check out the show notes, get on my email list, or drop me a line, head to brodywelch.com. That's Brody with an IE and Welch with a CH. I'd love to hear from you. If you learned something new or feel inspired to try something different in your life, I'd love for you to pay it forward by sharing this episode with a friend who you think could also benefit and give them a reason to listen. You'll be helping to create a world where we encourage each other to embody self-respect. Till next time, be good to yourself.